Hello, my name is Justin McCowan, and for my video channel here on YouTube, you'll notice it says Jake McPherce. I'll explain that a little bit here. My grandfather, many years ago, in the early 70s, or mid-70s, he nicknamed me Jake. I've always been prone to that name by him before he passed away. So I've always had it in my heart, basically, to want something to associate that with, like in respect to him. The name McPherce was nicknamed that my brother and one of my best friends from childhood gave to me. It was like a jokey thing where they used to kind of used to pick on me when I was younger, but, they gave me the nickname because I always fought back. That's what it was about. So, in collusion with both of those things, my grandfather's nicknaming that, and I think it's a cool name for me to have here on Facebook to commemorate those things, which nowadays I look at them as something that I cherish and wish I could go back and enjoy that again in my life. Alright, enough of that. My real name is Justin McCowan, and I'm about to embark on a first in my life to have an instructional video on an item that is really near and dear to my heart right now, and which is an engine. Now, before I get focused on the engine here, I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk out here, there we go. I've never done this, shooting a video of myself before and uploading it on YouTube to give instruction to anybody, but I'm hoping this really helps out, okay? Now, you can see right there behind me, that truck right there, it's a 1999 Ford F150 XL, okay? And I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm kind of new at this, but I want you to keep seeing the vehicle and what I'm trying to show you. Okay? Now, if you look down in there, that's where the engine was. The engine is out of the vehicle. The transmission's out of the vehicle. And if I can get another shot here, you see that plywood right there? Alright, that's where I pulled the engine up out of the vehicle. I couldn't get the engine and transmission separated apart. And so the weight of me lifting the engine up on that hoist right up there, well, actually I had a come along when I took it out. Then I borrowed the hoist to make it easier for me to put back in. Anyways, the process of getting the engine out with the transmission, it helped me separate the engine and transmission. Once I got it up to the point right about here, the transmission was right about this level here. So I had a problem getting the transmission separated from the engine when I was taking it out. So once I got it up to this height, the actual transmission started trying to separate from the engine. I took a screwdriver, tapped it in on both sides, the left and right side of the engine, transmission, and it then split apart for me. But I had all the bolts and stuff out. That was one little problem I ran into. Now I'm going to be straight up right now. The only way to get the oil pan off of this engine, and it's a 4.2 liter V6 engine. They're very popular amongst these F-150s. A lot of times you'll see an F-150 with a 4.6 liter engine in it, which is a bit different, okay? I don't know if you can take the oil pan off of that with it in the truck or not, but I'm going to tell you right from the get-go, if you have one of these, you need to take the oil pan off, you're going to have to take the engine up, at least in the engine compartment, to where you have some room underneath it to get the oil pan off with the transmission on it. So, the whole thing I'm doing this video on is hydrolock. The engine that was in this vehicle, I assumed it would maybe an overlap bearing in the bottom end, because I could turn the I could rotate the engine left or right, counterclockwise or clockwise, either way, and then it would always come to a dead spot where it would stop. Okay, and if you kept turning, it would tighten up more and it would get in a real bind. Okay, so I was assuming that maybe originally I bought the truck for $400. The guy explained to me what happened, so I assumed it was a rod cap. The rod bearings overlapped and stopped it from turning. But my first clue that it was something different was when I removed the spark plugs, doing my research and stuff, I found that this year model, make and model of car, they had a recall actually back when they were built because of the intake manifold gasket, and they were causing hydrolock. The hydrolock is simply whenever the gasket fails, and it allows water to go into the cylinder, and then when the piston returns up in that cylinder, whichever one has got the water filled up in it, it's like hitting a brick wall. Well, that brick wall won't allow it to go any further, and it's got to do something with that compression and that momentum that engine has, which causes the rod to bend, or in severe cases, the piston will crumble apart, break all the pieces, and you can have deeper damage. But luckily, with this one, all it did was bent the rod on the number 6 piston, and part of the sidewall of the piston itself chipped off, where the stress as it was bending caused pressure on the pin that holds the rod to the rod to the actual piston. So when it got in the bind, it chipped part of the side of the piston off. It didn't do any damage to anything else in the engine. So when I actually went to take the oil pan off to look, that's when I realized I couldn't take the oil pan off until I took the engine out. So it was a frustrating situation for me. So we're going to walk back around here front where my engine is. So mark your notes as I say this. Number 1, if you have hydrolock on your engine, or you need to get inside the oil pan to do any evaluation in there, whether it's a rod bearing that overlapped, or whether you want to clean out the oil pickup tube, either way, if you're going inside the engine on the bottom end, you're going to have to pull the engine up out of there. So remember that. That's absolutely, you're going to have to run into that. So don't get underneath the vehicle, jack it up, think you're going to take the oil pan off and waste your time, hours of work trying to take it off, because it's not going to happen, okay? Now, I don't know if I can turn this camera around or not, but I'd like to flip it around, but I'm going to try to do it so you can see this, okay? Alright, there's the engine right there, okay? Now I guess if I hold it at an angle like that, you can see it. I wish I could get it the other way. But, alright, here on the top you got the damper pulley. Underneath the damper pulley you got after you take the damper pulley off, you have the timing chain cover. Underneath the timing chain cover, which you can probably see right here, is the timing chain and gears. Then you got the oil pan here, right here, and then where I'm at with the engine, that's the reason I have it like this, because I wanted to make it simple to take stuff apart so you don't have to spend hours watching my video. I want to get to the meat and the grind of it and make it simple for you to understand things. Okay. Naturally, you're going to have to take, when you're disassembling the engine, you're going to just basically start from the top. Your fuel rail, or your intake manifold, your fuel rail, your lower intake manifold, those have to come off. Then you can take the heads off. When you take the heads off, you can get to the piston you need to take out. So naturally, when you're taking bolts out, just take the bolts out. Just remember where the bolts go back. And on the reverse going back, then you're going to be dealing with torque specs on the engine. Like when you bolt the heads down, there's a sequence you have to go in. to follow and a certain torque tightness that you have to get it at for it to seal properly and the engine to operate properly. The oil pan has torque specs. The heads have torque spec. The bolts that hold the bolt that holds the pulley here on has to be torqued down to a certain torque. All the bolts on your intake manifold, your exhaust manifolds, the bolt for the camshaft sprocket, all that has to be torqued to specifications. So when you get to that point to putting it back together, the best place I found was torquespec.com online. I don't have to buy a manual for it. It even describes, like the rod cap, when I put the rod cap on here for the piston rod, it called for 2 steps. One step, the first step was 29 foot-pounds, and then 1/4 of a turn. And that was it. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. At torquespec.com, you can type in the make and model of the vehicle, size of the engine, and it'll give you a list of all the torque specifications for that vehicle. Okay? Now, all right. I'm just going to walk through the disassembly of this engine. Okay? There's an order that you do it. The intake manifold is inside my store building right there. Okay? The intake manifold goes on the very top. It's like a plenum. It's like a plenum, okay? And it's basically for air to flow through. Okay? You take all the bolts out of that, then you'll be down to the lower intake manifold. The lower intake manifold fits in between your heads. And down, it's like a valley there, like the older style engines. You have a valley. Well, that's where the lower intake manifold sits, okay? And you have, those are the gaskets that fail on these vehicles. The lower intake manifold where it meets up with the top of the engine, where you're okay. Hold on 1 second. Where the lower intake manifold matches to the top of the engine between the 2 heads, that's the gasket that normally fails on you, okay? Pardon me, I'm like, had a brain cramp there for a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay. Now, when you disassemble it, you take the upper intake manifold off, take all the bolts out, make sure you don't lose them, where they go to, what they go to. And then when you put that back together, you're going to put some thread lock on them. That's what I've been reading about, the thread lock on them and the lower, when you need to put thread lock on it so they won't vibrate and back out of those. They're much smaller bolts than anything else on the engine. Now, after you've got the lower intake manifold off, then you can take the heads off. Right there's where the heads went on top. And them two are inside my building right there on the floor, waiting for me to put them on. Now, after you've got the top of the block cleared off, you've got what you call, I'm going to show it to you here. I've got my block, as you can see, sitting down on the pallet here, sitting on the flywheel. It's not hurting a thing. That right there, get a close-up view of it. That's the balancer shaft on the top of the engine. It is basically a purpose in that they use these engines in 3.8 liter front-wheel drive cars. That is a balancer for the frontward engines to help keep the engine balanced so it doesn't vibrate the thing to pieces. Okay? Sorry about the quality of light. I didn't realize it was like that. Okay. Now, that balancer pulley has a gear on top of it. The camshaft it's got a camshaft that is in the upper side of the engine, and then your crankshaft in the lower side. So that camshaft has a gear on the top side here, and of course your crankshaft has a gear on the top side of it. Now, once you're down to this point, you have the heads off, which all that is a simple thing. You just turn the bolts in counterclockwise to take them out. Organize it so you can get back to it. You know what bolts go where. Okay? Now at this point, the water pump is sitting right here. Okay? I don't have the water pump on it. I've already taken that off. I've already taken the heads and then all that other manifolds and all that off. Now we're going to start with the damper pulley. The damper pulley has to come off first. Okay? And if you'll notice, the damper pulley has a gear on top of it. That is the trigger wheel. That trigger wheel is important. It's an important item in it. As you see the notch on the very top of it there, the wide space. Okay, there's only one way that gear goes on this pulley, and I will attempt to show you that. I broke that gear that I just showed you when I was trying to take the oil pan off the truck with it in there. The reason was I put a block of wood there. I had no knowledge what that gear was for, honestly, and I raised the engine up and it cracked it about 4 places. Alright, on the back side of this gear, I know how it goes. I got this from a junkyard. It's brand new gear that somebody else had put installed on the engine, as well as the oil pump that I have back here for this engine. Actually, I got the timing chain cover, this gear, the damper pulley, and that for about $60 in a junkyard where you pull the parts off, and it's much cheaper. Okay, if you look at the back side of this gear, you see the marks on there? See that where it was laid against the damper pulley? That's a square, kind of a straight square mark there. When I rotate it around, see how that one right there, the top one there is like rounded? The mating mark where it was mated. Okay, that's rounded. Then I go down here and it's another square area. Right now, look at the damper pulley. The damper pulley, right there at top, see how that, where the bolt goes in, it's round? Now I'm going to rotate this, and that's square. And you have one more, and it is like a square end on it. Well, that is, oh, one other thing. See the keyway there? The keyway is at the top of it, facing the rounded mounting surface. So, when you take this and look at the back of this one, it's rounded on the top right there. I'm going to get this focused right. There you go. It's rounded. The other two are square. So that I know for a fact, and I couldn't find this online, is why I'm sharing this with you. I know for a fact that it goes on just like I have it there. You got the keyway here, the rounded surface right here, and then you've got that wide keyway there. Okay? Take it off, put it there. So where the keyway is, at 11 o'clock, right about 11 o'clock is where that wide tooth goes. So that's point number 2. Point number 1, you can't take the oil pan off with it in the truck. Point number 2, on the damper pulley, if you break yours or you're going to replace it, the wide area, the only wide area on that gear goes about 11 o'clock when you're looking at the damper pulley where you're putting the bolts in. Okay? Now, once you have that on there, there's no torque specs that I can find on that. Tighten it down. Don't over tighten them where you break them. You can feel it when you tighten it up. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do on this is I'm going to take off the timing chain cover. Okay? Right here it is, and I've already unbolted it. But it's got 3 large bolts that hold it on right there. When I lift it up, you'll see them. Okay? There, I've got it off. Like I said, common sense, unbolt, take all your bolts out. Now, I'm going to point this right here out to you. You see that bolt right there? That's on the timing chain cover. Make sure that's the only hex Allen wrench bolt that is on this engine that I could find. And it happens to be on one of the corners of the timing chain cover. If you look at it there, you can see where I have a broken piece on mine, where I broke it off. I had the indication. I had all the bolts out, and when it felt like I had all the bolts out, and I had gap at the top to where all it did was just pulled on it, and it didn't take much to snap that off real quick. Now I'm going to show you why it's so hidden. You see right there in that? You see that how deep that is? Well, I had dirt on mine, and I couldn't see that bolt there, and it's kind of down out of the way at the bottom of the engine there, so it's hard really to spot. Okay? So, don't make the mistake I did. Look for that bolt. The rest of them are hex head bolts. That's the only Allen wrench bolt on there. Remove all bolts out of that before you try taking that timing chain cover off, and you'll be good to go. Now, for the sake of more room here, I'm going to remove the oil pan, which is already unbolted. I'm going to take it, set it out of the way. Okay? I've already cleaned it all up too, so I can put it back together. Now this tube right here, that tube is your oil pickup tube. It actually bolts on right there. Right there. Okay, now I'm going to hold it at the top. Down here at the bottom here, you can see where it slides on that bolt there. There's 6 nuts that go on that one to hold the tube on there. And then after you've got the tube off, then this is the windage tray. Okay? You can see it says front right on there. Okay? It's got 6 bolts to hold that on. The purpose of this is actually to keep most of the circulation. The wind speed from the engine helps circulate the oil up into the parts above into the top of the engine to keep the engine lubricated. And still some air can get by to allow flow in the bottom end to the pickup tube. Okay? But it helps to bring that oil to the top to where it will lubricate everything like it's supposed to. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, and I've already done it, I've already taken the timing chain off of it 2 or 3 times to try to do videos and put it back on, put all that like I had it to try, because I was changing my timing chain gears and timing chain and the timing tension. But before I get to that, let me show you this. When you take the oil pan off, there's only silicone that goes on against the block here. When you have I'll show you one other thing here. When you have the timing chain cover on there, okay, the timing chain cover is going to be part of the oil pan mating surface. So it's going to mate here and come here and mate here and go all the way around. All that from down here, up here, across there, down here, around the other side is all silicone, seal. On the very back of the engine block, there's only one actual seal that will be in your kit to replace. It's this seal right here. That seal right there. That's going to be toward the back of the block before the transmission, and the curve in the oil pan will fit against this seal. Okay? So you take the old one off and discard it. Alright? Now the piston right here is the one that I changed. That rod right there and that piston, that's the one I changed. It takes 29 foot-pounds plus a quarter extra turn when you put it back together. Make sure the surface is clean on the journal where the cap and the rod mate together. Put your bolts in there. It only goes pretty much, the cap only goes on it one way. You'll notice that right away. It comes with that piston, that rod. That cap will match that rod. Okay. So you tighten it down, which I've already tightened it down. I got the piston in place, and they make a tool to help you put the piston in. And most of your places like O'Reilly's or AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts even have tools you can rent to do those things. So you don't have to buy one and hang on to it all your life and never use it again. Okay, so let me take the timing chain cover back off. I've got all this down here done. I only had one piston that I had messed up. Nothing else in the bottom end of the engine got messed up. Just that one piston and that one rod. I went to the junkyard, pulled it out of another engine. It's a standard size piston. The rings on it, I cleaned them up real good. The old ones I had that made it to that cylinder, and I put them on that piston after I cleaned the piston up good enough to put them on there where it all works properly. Okay? So, now we're to where I took the timing chain off and the timing gears. Okay? Now when you take it off, it's going to be real tight in between here, and I'll show you the bottom one, which is the new one I put on already. But you take them off, lift it together with both hands, and I can't do it with holding the camera, but I've got this one loose. You grab it on this side with one hand, and here, you may have to take a screwdriver and go underneath of it to get it out from between your timing chain tensioner, because it's real tight. It's got pressure on it because there's a spring over here that makes sure there's pressure against it. Okay? But take the old timing chain and gears off. Okay? Sorry about that. You take the old one off. Okay? And that is the timing chain tensioner. You see the arm right there moving. And a little hole there at the top right there. Okay, that's going to bolt on like that. It bolts on. Got a bolt there, there, and one there. That bolt to the block. I've already done it with the other one, so I'm going to show you. And then after you take the bolts out, you take that off. Now, right here is the actual new set that I put on. If you'll notice, there's a pin right there. Okay? That pin stays in until you get this assembled. Alright? Now I can lift this off. I've already got it past the tensioner there right now, so it'll be easy enough for me to do this. I just gotta work on it. Lift it up evenly, okay? Now there. Alright. Now, I want you to notice something on this. Do you see the dot there, the keyway there, and the keyway there? Okay, those are your alignment marks. The dots face the dots, and the keyways face the keyway. Now, this is my new chain and gears, so I had it installed properly. This is a brand new timing chain tensioner. That's my old one right there. Okay? You can see this one's kind of aged and worn right there on the inside of it. So, I chose, even though this has hydrolock, here's my reasoning. I had to get into the bottom of the engine to change out the piston. I had to take one head off for sure. But once you're down that far, you have curiosity whether there might be something wrong with the head gasket from that point. And they sell head gaskets mainly in sets of 2. So it made sense for me, and my dad always told me that when you take the head do one side of the head one head gasket, do the other side, because you're gonna have a fresher gasket on the one side, and if you don't do it on the other, you have like 130,000 miles on this engine, so you got 130,000 miles on that gasket, which could cause the other one to blow out over time after you get it reassembled. So he said, don't take that chance. Go ahead and replace both of them. Do a fresh set. That way you have even wear pressure against them other two gaskets, okay? The new gaskets. You have it even balanced out, okay? So, that's what I chose to do. And I thought, okay, I'm already this far. I had to take the oil pump off, okay, to get down this far. And I thought, well, why not go and put new gears in it too? Because that's one of the things the chains can stretch over time. You got 130,000 miles. You're putting another piston in it to fix hydrolock in the intake manifold gaskets and the head gaskets. Go ahead and for $23 get the chain and set, and another $15, $16 online get the tensioner too. That way you know all that stuff is new. When you put it back together, you practically have a new engine, except for the coloring in the block or whatever. Okay, so that is my reasoning. I got a whole gasket set, the timing chain, timing gears, the water pump, oil pump. I was fortunate to find a new one on the truck that I got the timing chain cover off of, a brand spanking new oil pump, as well as the gear on that I showed you at the beginning, the gear on the back side of the harmonic balancer. That's brand new. So somebody put work into the other engine that I got the stuff off of, and it didn't cost me any more than if I'd have found older stuff in the same junkyard. It's the same price. So that's why I like going there. You can find brand new things people put on engines, and it's pennies on the dollar compared to going to Advanced Auto Parts or somewhere. Okay, it's all about saving money, really. Okay, now, here are the bolts. Right there's a bolt. There's a bolt right there, and there's a bolt right there. Tighten them hand tight when you put that back together. Okay, which now I'm going to go the opposite way and show you how to put it back together. Now's when the torque comes into play, and I don't know the torques on everything off my memory. But I'm going to show you how to, when you're at this stage, you take the timing chains and gears off of it. You need to make sure the motor is in timing. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a 4.2 liter engine, remember. On this engine, okay, you have, right here, you see the keyway right here? Right there's the keyway. Okay? That keyway needs to be facing that keyway. Now, to know you're in the right position, the balancer shaft pulley, right there, and the crankshaft, or the camshaft pulley, these gears have dots on them right here. You want to make sure that them dots on them two gears are lined up right there. Okay? They need to be facing forward, the keyway facing up, and on the bottom side the keyway, and in that keyway. You have it lined up like that. You're in timing with the engine right now to put the timing gears on and the timing chain. So once you tighten down, you got that in line, and you tighten down the tensioner bolts, okay? Then you take your gear set. You can see right there I have the large gear right there, and see the dots are lined up straight across from each other. Now, let me set the phone down a second. Alright, we're going to take the gear, and we're going to set it on there, and they're going to line up. They're going to line up with the two teeth, the keyways, and your dot that's on the larger and your dot that's on the smaller one are going to line up. Now, on this side here, where that pin is, you're going to have to pull that chain in a little bit and get this to clear. Get it to clear that one arm right there. Once you get on the edge of it there, okay, now you can push it down, see? And it's going to be a tight fit even with the arm in there the way it is. Okay? Then what you want to do is you want to get these gears pushed down to the point that they actually go. Okay? And I'm just going to tap it with the hammer here. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it, but you want to get, there you go. It's just a tapping motion. You don't want to beat on any gears or anything, but you want that to go down all the way, okay, where it seats. Okay, now that is on. Once that is on, okay, and watch when I rotate the engine. Alright? See? Now, just line the dots back up. You're in timing right now at this point. You've done that. You're in timing with all, the whole engine's in timing right there. Okay? Once you're done with that, then you've got a gear here. If I can get it, figure out where I put it at here. This is the camshaft gear. Okay? It goes on the top. See the keyway on it? The keyway matches up to the keyway on the top. That right there is where it goes. Okay? Then you have a bolt that goes on here and tighten that up. And then right here is where your this is where your pulley, your damper pulley is going to go back on after you put the timing cover on. So at this point here, here's what we're going to end up doing. I'm going to line that up on the bolts. Okay? And that's going to set flush on the engine like that. But see, it's not flush because I still have to take that broken piece off. Remember, 2 points right now, and then I'm going to close up this video. My next video, I'll walk through as I am ready to put this thing actually back together. I'm going to break it up, putting the oil pan on, putting the timing chain cover on, the different things that you need to put on. I'm going to try to do a small video on each item I'm putting back on to make it easier for you to understand. That way, if you need the video for putting the oil pan back on, you'll have it. If you need any information, but anything you need to know that I can answer, put it in your comments down below, and I will be glad to comment on it, what I know about it. I'm not an expert in every way in life, but I found it hard to find anywhere on YouTube even or online the small details I needed to know about a 4.2 liter engine. This is my first experience with this particular engine, and I know it was difficult for me to find a video on it. I found a video, but I wasn't happy with what I saw because it really gave me no meat of the situation, what I had to do. The oil pan has to come off before you, or after you take the engine out of the truck. You can't remove it in the truck. It's a waste of time even trying. You're going to kill several hours trying to do it. Okay? Then once you've got it out of the vehicle, it's so much easier to work on. You disassemble everything down and where you're going to disassemble it, clean your engine block, make sure you got all your parts. And at the last video I have, I'll make sure I have a cheat sheet that you can look at and screenshot it or pause it long enough to write all of it down. That way you can go online and you can shop for the cheapest price or go to your hardware store. You know what you're asking for. Okay? So, my next step when I make another video is going to be progression of putting it back together to where you can understand it. And if you have questions, ask and I'll tell you. Okay? Um, Again, one more time, this is on a hydrolock 4.2 liter 6-cylinder engine out of a Ford F150, a 1999 model. So I'm hoping it's very helpful for every one of you out there who are looking for a solution how to fix this. You can do it without having to redo the whole block and throw it in the machine shop and all that garbage. This engine has 130,000 miles on it. There's nothing wrong with the engine except for the piston that bent, or the piston rod that bent, and the piston that chipped, and it didn't scar up the cylinder wall. There's no other damage on the engine internally. It's just a matter of replacing that piston. Some of them will even bend one or more than one piston rod. So typically it's because there's water in the cylinder and the piston is further down in the cylinder, and that's whenever it hits the water. The water is almost taken home in the whole cylinder wall between the head and the top of the piston when it hits there. It sucks that water in on the downstroke, and on the upstroke it has nowhere to go. So that's why you don't get more damage on the cylinder walls or something. All the pressure is below the cylinder wall against it, which allows it to weaken, bend the rod, and chip the side of the cylinder, or chip the side of the piston itself. That's why you don't find brakes in it. It's too far down really to brake. You don't have, you know what I mean? So it's in the downward motion, and it starts going back. It sucked that water in the cylinder, and you don't get that much damage on these things. And it's amazing, really, that you can fix these at that point. But I guess it's God's saving thing that you can fix it at that point. So I can't think of anything else to cover in this video. I hope you like it. You can scan through the video. In the next one, I'll try to have it organized better to where I'm doing an oil pan. You can see how to do it and put it back together. Okay. On the rod, the piston I put in, the rod cap, I've already done it. So let's consider that something you already know. You tighten it to 29 foot-pounds. It's easy to do. The cap just goes on the bottom. Match the rod up to the top side of the journal. Put the cap on. The 2 screws in. Tighten them hand tight. And then put 29 foot-pounds on it. And turn it an extra quarter of a turn or 90 degrees is what they show in the book. Okay? TorqueSpec.com will tell you the torque specs on all the stuff that they have on there for this engine. So we covered the rod and mating it on there. It's simple. Put your rod cap, your bearings in there. If you want to put new standard bearings, you can. Or if the bearings that were in it are just fine, you can put them back in it. The wear and tear, the breakage is not in the bearings themselves. So you keep all the bearings in the engine pretty much the same thing. And they probably got another 152, 300,000 miles on it, depending on how you treat the vehicle and how you change the oil and stuff. So that's not the issue with this engine. It's just a bent part from the hydrolock. Okay? Now, then my next video, I'll decide what it's going to be, but it's going to be going in reverse and putting it back together. I showed you how to put the timing chain and gears on. I showed you how to put the timing chain tensioner on. And it's basically hand tight on them tensioner bolts. And if you do mechanic work, you'll know when you can feel it is tight enough that it won't back out, but yet you might be at the verge that if you go any tighter, it'll break. And you don't want to break them. So I haven't found anything on the torque spec per se on them bolts unless Ford has Ford dealership has something that shows what they're supposed to be torqued at. But it can't be that much. Maybe 16, maybe 14 foot-pounds on it if you go foot-pounds, because them are small little bolts. Okay? you get it all in line, put the timing chain on, put the tensioner on, tighten it down, put the gears on, and you're set really then to put the timing chain cover back on. So probably my next step is going to be the timing chain cover. I'm going to clean it up. I'll do a video on it when I get ready to put it back together, and I'm gonna go. I'll go through the timing chain cover after I've got it on. I'll go through the oil pan sequence, putting it back together, and then when I get it set up straight and I go to put the heads on, I'll put the heads on. I'll walk you through that, and then I'll put the intake manifold on. And at that point, I'll probably put the engine in the truck to do the rest of it, because the fuel rail goes on next, and you have wires that hook to the fuel rail. Okay, I may do the fuel rail before I put it in the truck, but you don't want to put anything else on the engine till you know that you got the plugs plugged in properly on the fuel rail. Okay, and that it's important. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, and you go to drop the engine in there, and it's hard to feed wires in the proper way they go to the proper things they go to in between your upper and lower intake manifold. Okay? So the easiest way to do it is, and you have less weight and more maneuverability too, the last thing I'm going to do is put the upper intake manifold on it while it's in the vehicle. Plus you have a regulator box that goes on the firewall side of this engine that has two arms on it that are electronically activated to open butterfly valves in the lower intake manifold for airflow. That box, you want to do that when you have it out of the truck. And you do that after you have the intake manifold, the lower intake manifold on, and before you put the top one back on. So look forward to my next video, putting the timing chain cover on a 4.6 or 4.2 liter engine. This is a hydrolocked engine. That's what I'm doing this video for, and you can fix this engine. 2 points, then I'm gone. Number 1 point, don't try to take the oil pan off with it in the truck. Point number 2, highlight number 2, whatever you want to call it, is that bolt that's holding this corner of the timing chain cover on may be coated with dirt in that little hole there where that head seats down into. Make sure you get an Allen wrench the proper size and pull that and unscrew that bolt. It's the only Allen wrench bolt that holds that entire thing on. The rest of them are hex head bolts, and they hold on and they screw on. Not like a hex head bolt. That's the only one, and easily you can miss that bolt. So look for that bolt if nothing first, and take it out first. You'll save cracking your timing chain cover. Okay? And that's it, really. Those 2 highlights. Go ahead and take the engine out, pull the oil pan off afterwards, and make sure you get that bolt out of there. Those are the 2 things that cost of that. And don't jack up. Don't try jacking up your engine and take the oil pump off or the oil pan off, because you will break that gear right there. Okay? That's why I had to buy another gear. Okay? Now, I'll work on getting the timing chain cover cleaned up, and when I get it cleaned up, I will do a video on the timing chain cover, putting it back together. Okay? It's been fun, it's been new, and it's taken me almost 50 minutes of video to talk about what I'm doing. I hope people like what I did. It's not the most professional, but there's tricks in it that you can do. And here you got an actual video talking about that engine, 4.2 liter engine, and how to fix that problem and walk you through what to do. Torque specs, when you torque everything back together, if you're doing an engine and you've never done it before, then you know you got to torque stuff down. the destination to find that, if you don't have the books, is torquespec.com. And they're good. They got everything you need to know on the torque specs for that engine. I'll provide all that information after my last video. I will provide that information so that you can go there, and even if I have to make a video of just that cheat sheet of the parts that I used on the engine, and you can find them easily. Okay? Again, from Coleman, Texas, I'm Justin McCowan or Jake McPherce. That's what I'm going to go by. And I appreciate you watching my video. God bless everybody. And have fun doing your engine. And I really hope that I've made somebody's day to actually find information on the 4.2 liter engine. Somebody working on it and helping them through the guides to put it back together. Alright? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. I'm out of here.